You have probably heard it 1,000 times. Cloud computing is the future. You don't need local apps anymore. Some even say we might be living in a 3D simulation, which hopefully not. But I've had enough of the hype, so I decided to actually test it out, sailing my boat on the open ocean. For the next week, I'm ditching all of my local software and doing 100% of my work in the cloud. No app installed, just a browser, free softwares only, because I'm broke, or am I? And I'm doing it all on this thing at the kind of internet speed that keeps jumping from 30 to 50 megabits, real life conditions. This is what most people has. So is cloud computing ready to fully replace your local workflow? Or is it still just a tech fantasy wrapped in a marketing buzz? Let's find out. First, let's set up some rules for this challenge. One is I will not install any app on this device other than a browser. Those files must be on the cloud, not on my device. At the end of every section, I will give a number based on how much closer it goes with the actual local use. And I'll be doing this on a not so cutting edge, very mediocre machine. So let's begin the fun. Since I do most of my work, by work it is basically watching YouTube videos without touching grass, and because I'm a student, I have to rely on note taking, making these stuff. Yeah, I know these are really fun to make, and many more, like making videos, making the thumbnails, and also I do some light coding, just making some bad side projects that I left after a few weeks, and why not add some more things? Let's split them into two groups, like one for student me and one for other nonsense. Let's start with the student one. Word processing. Starting with the classic Microsoft Word. Most schools use it. It runs offline. It's dependable. But what if you want something cloud based and free? Well, there's Google Docs. It works, it's stable, and it saves everything automatically to Google Drive. But here's the thing, the UI looks kinda dumb, like you open a blank page and it's just sadness. The structure feels off, especially if you have used other prettier apps before. And don't get me wrong, it's functional, but it could look better. Then there's LibreOffice, which is open source and great for privacy, but that's not exactly cloud, unless you're using something like Collabora Online, which is a bit much. Still, if you're judging Google Docs, I would say it's free, autosaves in the cloud, and good enough for essays and notes. Final score, 8 out of 10, a worthy replacement for Microsoft Word, unless you're a UI snob or a school teacher who still thinks free software is illegal. For these things, Google Slides is the obvious choice here, but I didn't go with it. Why? Because I already picked Google Docs and I don't want this video to turn into a Google worship session. So I tried Canva, which is free, kind of. Most of the cool features are locked behind a paywall, but even on the free plan, it has some solid design tools, templates, and animation that make your slides look a bit less like they're made in 2006. That said, you can't fully replace PowerPoint with it if you need advanced stuff. So here's the breakdown. It looks good, easy to use. The features are limited on the free tier. Can't do heavy duty presentations. So it is a 7 out of 10. Gets the job done. Unless you need full control or you're the kind of person who embeds Excel charts into every slide. One thing to keep in mind that those Google Docs and slides will automatically be saved on the cloud storage, Google Drive. It has 120 gigabits or 15 gigabytes of storage, which is plenty for a student unless you're hoarding video files or downloading every PDF known to man. Yes, I'm looking at you. Email, there's nothing to say about it. Google Gmail and Outlook Web or Yahoo, most of the people uses the website version to access it anyway. I think the student part is finished now, so let's go to this not student me. When I'm making videos, most of my time isn't spent on writing or planning, it's spent on editing because I'm painfully slow at it. Then there's note taking, thumbnail design, and some light coding projects that I abandoned after 2 weeks. Normal hobby stuff. Photo editing in the cloud. So I started searching best online photo editor for free. A few names popped up, Canva again, and a bunch of tools with AI magic and weird UI. But one name kept coming up on the Reddit, Photopea. And honestly, I get it now. It's basically Photoshop Lite, but in your browser. No shady pop-ups, no surprise paywalls when you export your work, unlike some editors that wait until you finish your masterpiece just to slap you with a pay to download an HD message, which is evil by the way. And look, look, Google is putting Photopea in the middle of the list. Why? Why good stuff are in the deep? Sorry. Photopea just works. It has layers, shortcuts, some of which are similar to Photoshop, and most of the essential tools. Sure, some shortcuts don't work, but it's surprisingly usable. Let's save the project. Oh, did I say Photopea is like really similar to Photoshop? No, it's Photoshop. I even used it to edit an image of a terrible Blender animation, mine of course, and it held up well. Don't shame me, okay? I'm not Blender guru. Now technically Photopea saves to local storage by default, but you can also save projects to cloud storage like Google Drive or Dropbox. So I'm counting it. Final score a 9 out of 10 because it's free, it has really good features, almost Photoshop like experience, a bit slow sometimes, smaller ecosystem than real Photoshop, but still this is probably the closest I've come to fully replacing a desktop app. A real win for the cloud. Adobe, you've been warned. Part 3. Video editing in the cloud, aka pain. Now here comes the part everyone in the world is waiting for. Video editing in the cloud, and let me tell you, it was a disaster. I tried a bunch of online editors and here's what I found. No real timeline control, watermarks unless you pay, some don't even let you export in 1080p on the free tier, one crashed just by looking at the footage, but there was one editor that stood out, straight from the mighty land of Microsoft, Clipchamp, or as I like to call it, Clipchamp, Clownship. Yeah, I couldn't remember the name at first. Let's Google Clipchamp, click the first link, create videos effortlessly with AI power tools. Yes, there is also AI. Okay, sure, let's try this. Try for free. It's asking for a sign up. It's asking my email, temporary email. I'm 40 years old and I'm also a student. Microsoft forces you to make an account. Classic. Finally, I opened a blank project and here's where the real pain starts. See, I'm already slow at editing. I try to rely on shortcuts, presets, muscle memory to at least do it faster than usual. But in the cloud, no shortcuts, no timeline fluidity. It's all drag and drop, click and cry. So I was just doing all the things using my mouse. Am I an idiot? It was slow, it was laggy, and it crashed a lot. But to be fair, because it was all online, I didn't lose progress. So, yay! Final score 2 out of 10. I'm not a bad person, I'm just too much generous to give it a 2. I don't want to bully cloud computing, but this ain't it. Editing in the cloud, not today, not tomorrow, not even a Chromebook, note taking with AppFlowy. A really interesting story. Now, I've got to talk about my favorite part of all this, note taking. My go-to tool is AppFlowy, open source, locally focused, and with a clean UI and useful features for scripting. But here's the problem. When I try to open the desktop version on my PC, it just broke. Like completely. It turned into this sad black and white box and never loaded again. I uninstalled it, wiped the files, even going really deep in File Explorer, but nothing worked. It's permanently broken. Thankfully, AppFlowy has a web version and that's what I'm using right now. But it's glitchy, buggy, weird things kept happening all the time. Kinda janky compared to the app version. But hey, I'm used to it, so I'm sticking with it for now actually. And if you know a better note-taking app, drop it in the comments right below the like button. Final score 6 out of 10, not because it's bad, but because the web version feels like a beta version of my favorite tool, and honestly this is my main reason I want to switch to cloud, to keep using AppFlowy even after it abandoned my PC. And let's just make these boxes check because we can use these apps in the websites, and for the most part this doesn't have that much issue. Part 4, coding in the cloud. Is it possible? Now let's talk about coding. I usually write code in VS Code, probably the most used code editor on the planet. It's kinda like Windows, not the flashiest, but it just works and everyone uses it. Yes, it's made by Microsoft tool, but unlike Windows, they don't charge a license fee just to open a text file, so small win. Then there's the hardcore devs, you know the stereotypes. They use Vim, NeoVim, or some dark themed terminal based custom setup that only they understand. These are the people who think in binary and probably boot into Arch Linux just to write a to-do list. Respect, perfect, but not for me. Enter the CodeChef IDE, aka it's on the first page of Google. So when it came to cloud-based coding, I had a lot of options. Replayed GitHub code spaces, it's kinda advanced, Stack Blitz, and whatever other fancy online IDs Reddit loves to argue about. But I kept it simple. I searched online coding IDE, looked at the first page of Google, saw CodeChef's IDE, and thought, yeah, this will do. Why? Well, bunch of Reddit users said it worked, and honestly that's enough for me. So I tried out, wrote a little HTML, CSS and JavaScript, made a portfolio site that looked Finnish. Nothing makes sense on it, but hey, I made something. The things I liked about it: no install required, just open the browser and go. It has decent performance, not blazing fast but totally usable, and it supports multiple language, handy if you switch around like I do. But there are also some things are missing, like small community, less plugins, not like BS code, limited to small side projects. This isn't replacing a full development environment. The UI is bare-boned, feels more like a practice space than real workspace. I could give it a 7. It won't replace your full local setup, but for basic coding, quick testing, or if you're away from your machine, this works surprisingly well. Is the cloud enough? So, after a full week of doing everything in the cloud, here's something that I've learned. Some stuff, totally fine. Google Docs for notes work like a charm. Photo editing with Photopea, surprisingly solid. Email, documents, slides, all good. But once you start getting into the heavier tasks like video editing or advanced tools, things fall apart really quick. Clipchamp crashed more than my motivation on Monday morning. Flow's web version is hanging on by a thread, and the whole thing made me miss the reliability of just using local apps. Yes, cloud computing can be super convenient, especially for students, travelers, or people who only use docs, spreadsheets, or watch occasional YouTube videos. If that's you, the cloud life might actually be perfect. But if you're like me, trying to edit videos, code weird projects, and make weird Blender animations, then full cloud living still isn't there yet. I'll give the cloud lifestyle a generous 6 out of 10. It's close, but not close enough to replace local apps just yet. Oh, and it still dies without internet, so that's that. Can you survive just on a Chromebook? I would love to know. Drop your take in the comments and just tell me what cloud tools you actually like using. And if you're curious on how AI totally messed up how we search stuff online, click on that video right here. Spoiler, it is another AI slowfest, but a good one. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you somewhere in the cloud.